In my last video, I went over the Earth Starter deck and some modifications you can make to give more direction and take advantage of the one-drop beaters that it included. Since that video, I've managed to get my hands on a couple more Earth cards, most specifically Viserys and the subject of this week's video, Drayata and Ambrosia. In my testing, I found that the Earth deck wants to go second, between powerful beaters like Viserys, Tectaris, and Lost Station, and the back row hate of Equal Links. The deck really just doesn't have much going for it on turn 1. The deck very much wants to drop beaters and just start swinging, which we obviously can't do in the opening turn, so I started looking into a blind second build. While the deck was getting bodies on the board quickly, it was losing the staple back row cards like Shield and Poison Arrow. The beaters didn't really mean anything if they were getting popped or stopped before they could actually do anything. That led to me wanting more back row hate in the deck, and while we already had Equal Links, I experimented with Tornadoes because it's a cheaper cost, but the issue I found was that our Spirit deck was already really tight, and throwing in Wind Spirits was hard to justify. On top of that, bouncing a card is really good, but it just means our opponent still has access to them. Thunderstorm is a little bit heavier of a cost, but we're already running the Thunder Spirits, and it just eliminates the problem permanently. With that taken care of, what I found hurt the deck was the speed of other decks like Thunder and Frost. Thunder, of course, having Zeus to turbo our Astro Rabbit and then rip your hand in the process, and Frost just dumping its deck into the underworld. Our deck was just having trouble keeping up with the resource advantage that those two decks generated. With that in mind, I looked at Drayata and our Ambrosia cards in order to speed the deck up a bit. The typical Ambrosia draw decks are focused on getting Viserys and Lotagon out as fast as possible, but like the other Earth builds, back row is just too strong against the deck, and having 20 cards in hand doesn't really matter if we're just getting stopped by cards like Gorgon and Shield. So, our deck has 3 goals in mind now. 1. Draw power to keep up with Thunder and Frost. 2. Back row hate. And 3. Just overwhelming board presence. With that in mind, let's take a look at the deck. Starting things off is our draw engine. 3 copies of Drayata, 2 Lotagon, and then 3 copies of each Ambrosia card. The standard for Ambrosia draw decks. We're not running the Golden Apple because while it is good on paper to just discard a card from your opponent's hand, it's a little cost heavy and it only works with Lotagon, so we're missing out on a very big plus. And in our going second lineup, we're not getting the best benefit out of it because our opponents already played the cards they want onto the field. Up next we have our primary forms of back row hate, 3 copies of Equal Links and 3 copies of Demeter. Equal Links is arguably the best card in our deck, a nice 4 attack stat, ability to Nexus, back row hate, and it's a searchable 1-drop Elestral. It's a card that has a lot going for it, and we want to see it as often as possible. Demeter is essentially Equal Links' best friend. Not only does it provide free material to Nexus with, but it serves as a way to buff our attack to get over stronger Elestrals that threaten our little guys, most specifically our Rummagem and our Drayata. Up next we have our beaters, 3 copies of Viserys and 1 Lost Station. Viserys is in my opinion one of the strongest Elestrals in the game. It's a great effect that in theory grows more powerful every turn, but what I find more than that is that Viserys is an excellent target for back row bait. It's a card whose presence on the board makes the opponent respond. They have to use their shields, their poison arrows, or their Gorgons on it, or else we just start overwhelming the field with our board presence. If this card goes unchecked, it's pure card advantage. 1 Viserys is already threatening enough, and the idea of 2 or 3 is enough to make our opponents spend their resources on it, regardless of what else is on our field. Lost Station is just a solid beater that grows stronger when paired with Equal Links or Demeter. The reason I'm going Lost Station over Tectaris is that deck space is tight, and while I wouldn't oppose to running Tectaris over Lost Station, I just find that without the full life forest, we're bringing out Tectaris' explosiveness just a tiny bit. Next up is one of the most important souls in our deck, and that is Rummagem. It gets to everything except Lotagon and searches for beaters, back row hate, and draw power. We never go wrong when we see this card in our hand. Our last main deck Elestral is 3 copies of Astro Rabbit. It helps us dig through the deck to find exactly what we need and provides a nice solid defense as well. I cut Elechick from the previous build because despite the fact that we're running 3 Demeter, we usually draw into them with the speed of the deck, and we don't really need to waste the cast on Elechick itself when that could instead go to Equal Links or Viserys. Onto our runes, we have our 2 removal cards, 3 copies of Earthquake, and 3 copies of Thunderstorm. We're an Earth deck, so the cost of Earthquake doesn't really hurt us, and of course we're recycling with Ambrosia anyways, so we can fire them off or hold them for more important monsters, and it never really hurts us. Thunderstorm is here to take care of our biggest issue in the form of back row. I find that going in blind and just dropping a Thunderstorm usually takes care of whatever problem cards our opponent may have set, clearing the board for Equal Links and Viserys to get in the work. Being able to drop our beaters unopposed is worth the cost of Thunderstorm, and of course because we're running Astro Rabbit, we already have some Thunder Spirits to make use of in the Spirit deck. And then finishing off our deck we have our staples, 3 copies of Gorgons, and 2 copies of Shield, and 2 copies of Poison Tipped Arrow. Gorgon is in my opinion the best turn in the game. It just turns any card on your opponent's field into a brick. Poison Tipped and Shield are both very strong, but I really hate paying the cost for Shield. The activation is 1, and then 1 to 3 just tends to hurt, especially with the cards that are coming out in Daybreak. Poison Tipped is very strong, but I just don't like that it's on cast. If it was a card we could activate any point in time, I'd consider running the third copy in the main deck, but with just the two, I think we're more than fine, especially as a going second deck. Our Spirit deck consists of 15 Earth and 5 Thunder. Onto our side, we have the third copies of Poison Tipped and Shield, sometimes eyesighting into going first, and having a third copy of these is just essential in that case. Joining them is 2 copies of Tsunami and 2 Water Spirits. Tsunami is a very strong card, but going second, it's just hard for me to justify it, and our Spirit deck is really tight, so it's hard to justify putting in those 2 Water Spirits into our main Spirit deck. Our last 4 cards are 2 copies of Lavalith and 2 Fire Spirits. Lavalith is a very powerful going second card. The issue is that our field tends to have a lot of presence on the field with our Demeters and our Equilinxes, and going through our deck knowing that I have 2 bricks that I won't be able to cast is just eating away at me the entire time they're in there. Truthfully, if I could find the Spirit deck balance, I would love to have them in the main deck, but it's just hard to justify drawing into that brick when everything else is consistently live. The final 2 slots in our side deck are empty because I haven't found anything that I'm really sold on yet. There are a lot of powerful staple cards that we can use, but I still haven't found the right mix, and I haven't done enough testing to really justify any card over the other in those last 2 slots. So, if you have any theories or ideas for those last 2 slots or anything in the main deck, I'd love to hear them down in the comments below. Till next time, peace.